Have you ever noticed how the loudest person in an argument is almost never the strongest one? Think about it. Why is it that some people can end a heated argument with just a few calm words, while others talk endlessly and still lose respect? What if the real power in any argument is not about proving you are right, but about controlling how you respond? Most people believe arguments are battles. They think winning means talking faster, talking louder, or landing the final insult. But that belief is exactly why they lose. Because arguments are not tests of intelligence. They are tests of emotional control. And the person who controls their emotions controls the outcome. Here is a truth that may change the way you see every conversation from now on. The moment you get emotionally triggered, you hand your power to the other person. The moment your heart rate rises and your thoughts scatter, you stop thinking clearly. Your words lose weight. Your presence weakens. And even if you are technically right, you lose authority. Calm is not weakness. Calm is dominance. Psychologically, humans respond to stability. When someone stays composed while others are reactive, the brain reads that as strength. It signals confidence. It signals certainty. It signals that this person is not threatened. And when someone is not threatened, they are dangerous in the best way possible. Think about the people you respect the most. They don't rush to defend themselves. They don't explain everything. They don't fight every battle. They choose their words carefully. They pause. They observe. And when they speak, their words land with impact. Arguments escalate because both sides are trying to protect their ego. The ego hates being questioned. It hates losing status, so it reacts fast, loud, emotional. But the ego is impatient, and impatience always leads to mistakes. When you learn to step out of ego and into awareness, you instantly rise above the conflict. This is where calm control begins. Calm control means you decide when to speak, how to speak, and whether the argument is even worth continuing. It means you are not pulled into emotional chaos just because someone else is losing control. It means you remain grounded while others are desperate to be heard. And here's the most powerful part. When you stay calm, you force the other person to confront themselves. Their anger becomes obvious. Their insecurity becomes visible. Their lack of control exposes itself. You don't need to attack them. Their behavior speaks for you. Most people fear silence in arguments. Silence feels uncomfortable. It feels like weakness. But silence is only uncomfortable for the person who needs validation. For the person who is calm, silence is a weapon. It creates space. It slows the pace. It forces reflection. The human brain hates uncertainty. When you don't react the way someone expects, their mind scrambles. They lose rhythm. They lose direction. And in that moment, the power shifts. This is why calm people end arguments without trying. They don't chase understanding. They don't beg to be heard. They don't explain themselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding them. They understand something most people don't. You don't need to convince everyone. You only need to stay aligned with yourself. Control your tone, and you control the temperature of the conversation. Lower your voice, and the room listens harder. Slow your words, and they carry more weight. Choose clarity over speed, and your presence becomes unshakable. Arguments feed on reaction. Starve them of reaction, and they die. This is not about being passive. This is about being precise. This is about knowing that your energy is valuable and not wasting it on emotional noise. When you speak from calm, every word becomes intentional. And intention is power. By the end of this video, you will understand how to shut down arguments without raising your voice, without insulting anyone, and without losing respect. You will learn how to respond in a way that makes people think twice before challenging you again. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are composed. Stay until the end, and you won't just learn what to say. You will learn who to become in every conversation. Once you understand that calm is power, the next question becomes unavoidable. If calm control is so effective, why do most people still lose arguments so easily? Why do smart, capable people walk away from conversations feeling frustrated, misunderstood, or defeated? The answer is simple, but uncomfortable. Most people don't lose arguments because they lack intelligence. They lose because they are ruled by emotion. The human brain has two modes. One is reactive, the other is deliberate. When someone challenges you, criticizes you, or disrespects you, your brain instantly looks for danger. Your heart rate increases. Your muscles tighten. Your thoughts speed up. This is not logic. This is survival mode. And in survival mode, clarity disappears. This is where most arguments are lost. People speak before they think. They interrupt. They defend. They explain too much. They try to win instead of trying to understand. And every one of these reactions weakens their position. Not because they are wrong, but because desperation is visible. Psychologically, the need to be right is rooted in fear. Fear of looking weak, fear of losing status, fear of being judged. When ego takes control, the goal is no longer truth. The goal becomes validation. And the moment you seek validation from someone who is attacking you, you give them power over you. That is why arguments escalate so quickly. One emotional reaction triggers another. Voices rise. Words become sharper. Listening stops. At that point, no one is communicating. They are performing. Each person is trying to protect their image rather than resolve the issue. And here's the hard truth. The person who cares the least about winning often holds the most power. Think about it. When someone desperately needs to be right, they are easy to manipulate. You can provoke them. You can distract them. You can pull them off balance. But when someone is detached, calm, and grounded, they are unpredictable. And unpredictability creates respect. Most people also lose arguments because they over-explain. They think more words mean more clarity. But the opposite is true. When you talk too much, you reveal insecurity. You give the other person more material to attack. You dilute your strongest points by burying them under emotion. Strong communicators don't rush. They let their words breathe. They understand that silence can say more than a paragraph ever could. Another mistake people make is arguing to change the other person's mind. That rarely works. When someone feels attacked, their brain closes. They defend their position even harder. Logic bounces off emotion. Facts don't penetrate ego, so the harder you push, the more resistance you create. This is why arguments feel exhausting. You are trying to control something you cannot control. Another person's perception, their beliefs, their emotions. The moment you release that need, the tension drops. You regain control of yourself. And that is the only control that truly matters. Emotion also distorts timing. People respond too quickly. They fill silence out of discomfort. They answer questions that don't deserve answers. They chase approval without realizing it. Calm people don't do this. They allow moments of discomfort. They let accusations hang in the air. They observe instead of reacting. And while others are burning energy, they are conserving it. There is a psychological law at work here. The person who reacts first usually reacts from weakness. The person who responds last usually responds from strength. Delay creates dominance, not because it is manipulative, but because it allows clarity to return. This is not about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. Feeling anger is human. Acting from anger is optional. When you pause, even for a few seconds, you interrupt the emotional cycle. You regain access to logic. You choose intention over impulse. And when you do that consistently, something powerful happens. People start changing how they approach you. They sense that provoking you won't work. They realize emotional pressure won't move you. And slowly, arguments begin to lose their grip over your life. You don't need to overpower people. You don't need to dominate conversations. You only need to stop letting emotions speak before wisdom does. Because the moment you stop reacting, you start leading. When you stop reacting, something unexpected happens. The noise fades, the pressure shifts, and suddenly, you are no longer inside the argument. You are standing above it. This is where true control begins, and it starts with something most people underestimate: silence. Silence is not the absence of confidence. It is the presence of certainty. In arguments, silence feels dangerous because it removes the mask. It forces honesty. And for someone driven by ego, that is terrifying. Most people rush to fill silence because silence exposes their insecurity. It makes them question themselves. It makes them wonder if they said too much or revealed too much. That discomfort is exactly why silence works. When someone attacks you and you don't immediately respond, their brain searches for feedback. They expect resistance. They expect defense. When it doesn't come, their momentum breaks. Their emotional energy has nowhere to go, and without momentum, an argument collapses. Silence forces the other person to hear themselves. Think about how many arguments survive only because both sides keep feeding them with words. Remove one voice, and the fire loses oxygen. The other person either calms down or exposes their lack of control. In both cases, you gain leverage without saying a single word. Psychologically, humans mirror behavior. When you lower your emotional intensity, it invites the other person to do the same. When you pause, you slow the entire interaction. This creates space for reason to return. Silence also signals boundaries. It says, without saying it, that you will not engage with chaos, that you are selective with your energy, that not every comment deserves a response. This alone changes how people treat you. But silence is not passive. It is intentional. It is controlled. It is awareness in action. There is a difference between being quiet because you are afraid and being quiet because you are powerful. Fearful silence feels tense. Powerful silence feels grounded. The body language is relaxed. The breathing is steady. The eyes are present. This kind of silence communicates more than words ever could. And here's the key insight. Silence buys you time. Time to think. Time to choose. Time to respond instead of react. In that space, your intelligence returns. Your emotions settle. Your perspective widens. Many arguments are won not by what is said, but by what is not said. When you resist the urge to explain yourself, you deny the other person control over your self-worth. When you resist the urge to defend, you show confidence in your position. When you resist the urge to interrupt, you let their argument reveal its own weakness. Silence also triggers self-reflection. People often say more than they should when they are uncomfortable. They contradict themselves. They escalate unnecessarily. They reveal motivations they didn't intend to show, all because they are speaking into a void. This is why experienced negotiators pause before responding. This is why leaders don't rush their words. This is why the calmest person in the room often has the most authority. Silence is not about winning. It is about positioning. When you stay silent, you step out of the emotional game and into the strategic one. You are no longer trying to prove anything. You are observing, listening, measuring, and when you do speak, your words land heavier because they are rare. The mind values scarcity. When someone talks constantly, their words lose value. When someone speaks selectively, their words gain importance. Silence creates that scarcity. This doesn't mean you never speak. It means you choose the moment. You wait until your words can end the argument instead of extending it. Silence is also self-respect. It is knowing that your peace matters more than being right, that your energy is not free, that not every challenge deserves engagement. When you master silence, arguments stop feeling threatening. They become predictable. You recognize patterns. You see emotional traps before stepping into them. And slowly, something changes inside you. You stop feeling the need to prove yourself. You stop feeling controlled by other people's reactions. You begin to trust your presence more than your words. That is when silence stops being uncomfortable and starts becoming your strongest comeback. Once silence has shifted the balance, something powerful opens up. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer defending. You are thinking. And this is where intelligence quietly takes control of the situation. Most people believe arguments are about attacking and counter-attacking. But the strongest communicators don't fight head-on. They redirect. They let the other person walk into their own confusion. Not with insults, not with aggression, but with clarity. When someone comes at you emotionally, they are already unstable. Their words are driven by feeling, not logic. This is an opportunity, not a threat, because emotion collapses when it is gently questioned. Instead of pushing back, you slow things down. A calm question can disarm more effectively than a sharp statement. When you ask someone to explain their position, you force them to move from emotion to logic. And many people cannot do that. Their argument sounds strong in their head, but weak when spoken out loud. This is not manipulation. This is awareness. When someone attacks you, they expect resistance. They expect you to defend your identity. When you respond with curiosity instead of defense, their script breaks. Their confidence fades. They start searching for footing. Simple questions do this. What do you mean by that? Can you explain why you feel that way? What makes this so important to you? These are not aggressive questions. They are calm, neutral, controlled. But psychologically, they flip the dynamic. Now the other person is explaining, they are justifying, they are thinking. And while they think, their emotional charge drops. Arguments survive on certainty. Questions dissolve certainty. Another powerful move is reflection. Repeating someone's words back to them, calmly and without judgment, forces them to hear themselves. Many people have never truly listened to their own arguments. When they hear them reflected back, they recognize the excess, the exaggeration, or the contradiction. This creates discomfort, but it is productive discomfort. People rarely argue with someone who understands them, and understanding does not mean agreement. It means clarity. When someone feels heard, their need to fight decreases. Most arguments escalate because people talk past each other. When you slow the pace and reflect instead of react, you pull the conversation out of chaos and into structure. There is also power in narrowing the focus. Emotional arguments jump everywhere. One accusation leads to another. Past issues are dragged in. The topic expands until it becomes overwhelming. Calm control brings the conversation back to one point. You don't chase every claim. You don't answer everything. You choose one clear point and stay there. This communicates leadership. It shows you are not overwhelmed. It shows you are not scattered. It shows you decide what matters and what doesn't. Another mental shift happens here. You stop trying to win. You start trying to understand the frame of the conversation. When you understand the frame, you control it. People often argue to feel superior. When you remove that reward by staying composed, they lose motivation. The argument loses fuel. And here's the deeper truth. You don't need to expose someone's weakness. If you stay calm and clear, their weakness reveals itself naturally. Confusion becomes visible. Contradictions surface. Emotional exaggeration collapses under simple logic. And all of this happens without you raising your voice or attacking their character. This is psychological strength. You are not dominating the other person. You are dominating yourself. And that changes everything. There is a quiet confidence in not needing to overpower someone, in letting truth stand on its own, in allowing silence, questions, and clarity to do the work for you. When you reach this level, arguments stop feeling personal. You see them as patterns of human behavior. You recognize fear, insecurity, and ego in real time. And because you recognize them, they no longer control you. You don't rush. You don't chase. You don't react. You respond with intention, and in that space, arguments begin to end themselves. When you reach this level of awareness, something inside you shifts. You no longer feel the need to defeat the other person. You no longer feel pulled to prove your intelligence or defend your worth. And this is where true mastery appears. The strongest move in any argument is knowing when winning no longer matters. Most people think power comes from being right. But real power comes from being free. Free from the need to convince. Free from the need to dominate. Free from the emotional grip of the moment. When you detach from the outcome, the argument loses its control over you. Detachment does not mean you don't care. It means you care about the right things. You care about your peace. You care about your integrity. You care about your energy. And you understand that not every disagreement deserves your attention. Psychologically, arguments only continue when both sides are invested. Remove your emotional investment, and the structure collapses. The other person may still be talking, but the fight is already over. This is where many people get confused. They think walking away means losing, but walking away with clarity is not retreat. It is self-respect. When you disengage calmly without sarcasm or anger, you send a powerful message. You show that your identity is not dependent on their approval. You show that you are not controlled by provocation. And that kind of confidence cannot be attacked. Sometimes, the most effective comeback is a simple statement followed by silence. I understand your point. I don't agree, but I respect your view. This conversation isn't productive right now. These words don't inflame, they close. They signal maturity. They draw a boundary without hostility. Boundaries are not walls. They are filters. People who lack boundaries argue constantly because they feel responsible for correcting everyone. People with boundaries choose their battles, and because they choose carefully, they are taken seriously when they do engage. There is also a deeper psychological layer here. When you don't give people the emotional reaction they expect, they are forced to reevaluate their approach. Aggression loses its reward, manipulation stops working, the dynamic changes, and often, respect follows. Ending an argument without winning it requires courage. It requires letting go of ego. It requires trusting that your worth does not need to be defended in every conversation. This is not weakness. This is emotional strength. Emotionally strong people don't argue to feel important. They don't need the last word. They don't measure their value by who agrees with them. They move through life with an inner steadiness that arguments cannot disturb. When you disengage intentionally, you protect your mental space. You keep your focus sharp. You refuse to let other people's chaos become your responsibility. And here's something most people never realize. The person who stays calm and disengages with grace is often remembered as the stronger one. Not immediately, but over time, people replay conversations in their minds. They remember who lost control. They remember who stayed composed. They remember who spoke with clarity and who spoke with emotion. Silence after clarity leaves an imprint. This is why you don't need to chase closure. You don't need to force agreement. You don't need to convince someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Your calm exit says everything that needs to be said. At this level, arguments stop feeling personal. You see them as reflections of where people are emotionally, not judgments of who you are. And that realization is liberating. You begin to choose peace without guilt. You begin to value energy over ego. You begin to understand that walking away can be the most confident move in the room. Because when you are centered, grounded, and detached from the need to win, nothing said in anger can shake you. And that is the moment arguments truly end. When you learn to stay calm, to pause, to question instead of attack, and to walk away without ego, something deeper forms inside you. It's not just a skill anymore. It becomes an identity. You stop preparing comebacks. You stop rehearsing arguments in your head. You stop fearing confrontation because you know something others don't. You are no longer touchable. Being untouchable does not mean people never disagree with you. It means their disagreement no longer controls your emotions. It means their tone does not dictate your state of mind. It means you decide how deeply anything reaches you. This is the highest level of conversational power. Most people live in reaction. A word triggers them. A look unsettles them. A comment ruins their mood. They are constantly giving other people access to their inner world. And because of that, they are always vulnerable. Untouchable people are different. They listen without absorbing. They observe without internalizing. They respond without surrendering their peace. Psychologically, this creates a powerful presence. When someone realizes they cannot provoke you, they lose leverage. When they see that their words don't shake you, they instinctively adjust. Human beings respect emotional stability because it signals strength. You don't need to announce confidence. You demonstrate it by how little you react. This is where arguments stop being threats and start becoming irrelevant. You can stand in disagreement without tension. You can hear criticism without collapsing. You can face hostility without mirroring it. And here's the truth that changes everything. The more centered you become, the less often arguments even happen. People sense energy. When you carry calm authority, fewer people challenge you impulsively. Not because you intimidate them, but because your presence communicates clarity. There is nothing chaotic to push against. You also stop attracting unnecessary conflict. Drama feeds on emotional availability. When you are grounded, drama finds no entrance. Being untouchable also means knowing when words matter and when they don't. You no longer chase every misunderstanding. You don't correct every false assumption. You understand that your life does not improve by winning small arguments. Your silence becomes intentional. Your words become measured. Your reactions become rare. And rarity creates value. There is also a deep internal reward that comes with this state. Mental peace. No more replaying conversations at night. No more regret over what you should have said. No more emotional hangovers from pointless conflicts. You trust yourself. You trust that if something truly matters, you will handle it with clarity. And if it doesn't, you will let it pass without resistance. This kind of self-trust is magnetic. People listen more closely when you speak, because you don't speak to fill space. You speak to add meaning. And when you stop trying to dominate conversations, your presence naturally becomes dominant. This is emotional leadership. You are not controlled by impulse. You are guided by awareness. You don't react to pressure. You absorb it and respond intentionally. And when you do respond, it's calm, it's clear, it's final. Arguments don't end because you overpower the other person. They end because there is nothing left to fight against. No emotional fuel, no ego resistance, no chaos to engage with. Just clarity. Becoming untouchable is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming centered. You still care, you still feel. But you are no longer at the mercy of other people's emotions. You choose your state, you choose your energy, you choose your response. And once you master that, no argument can take anything from you. Because the strongest comeback is not a sentence. It's a state of mind.